The risks of homeschooling. This was a Harvard professor's article that came out. It came out a while back, and it all of a sudden, because of this isolation issue, it came and resurfaced, and I guess she rewrote it. And this is a Harvard professor. And I am going to put in the chat here the website so you guys can check it out as well. And I'm going to read some of this article here. Let's see if I can do this. Bear with me, guys. My eyeballs today have not been doing their job correctly. But here's the website. And I'm going to go ahead and read some of this because this woman, and I went and did some research on her, like a biography on her and everything. And she doesn't say much about family life. So I wonder if she even has a family, like children, and is a mother. So we're going to read this. It says, apparently, increasing number of American families are opting out of sending their children to school, choosing instead to educate them at home. Homeschooling kids now account for roughly 3 to 4% of school-age children in the United States, a number equivalent to those attending charter schools and larger than the number currently in parochial schools. Okay. Yet Elizabeth Bartlett Westerstein, public interest professor of law and faculty director of the law school's child advocacy program, sees risks for children and society in homeschooling and recommends a presumptive ban on the practice. So she wants to ban homeschooling. And the reason she wants to ban homeschooling is she believes that, and I'm trying to find it here. I have it on my notes. So let's see. Yeah, this practice, she says here, this practice, Bartlett says, can isolate children. She argues that one benefit of sending children to school at age 4 or 5, that the teachers are mandated reporters required to alert authorities to evidence of child abuse or neglect. Teachers and other school personnel constitute the largest percentage of people who report to Child Protective Services. She explains, whereas not one of the 50 states requires that homeschooling parents be checked for prior reports of child abuse. Okay, and then she also goes into talking about how children should grow up exposed to democratic values, ideas about non-discrimination and tolerance of other people's viewpoints. So she gets into all of this. I mean, you can read the article, and there's so much more she gets into about homeschooling and how you shouldn't homeschool your children and how it's a deprivation for your children. And Mark, can you put that picture up that we talked about earlier? Because we're going to talk about that as well. Because this was an interesting thing. In the article, they put this picture up. And I don't know if you guys can see this. It's a house. And the house has on the side view books. It says math, writing, and stuff. And on the end where the little child is peeking through there, it shows Bible. And there's a child caged in like they're in prison. This is what she represents what a homeschooler is. And where the public school children are the ones out playing and socializing. So I found this very interesting. And what I also found interesting, because we've been talking about the C issue, nobody can socialize today. No children can go to school. No child is to go outside and play. At least here in the apartment complex we live in, the children are not even allowed to go to the playground. And I've brought up videos I've shared with friends where police officers have come to playgrounds where children were playing at, just a small group of children that were family members, and said, you can't do that. The playground is closed. You're done. There's no socializing. Okay. So here's this woman concerned about the isolation of homeschool children, where homeschool children per capita are more socialist. They're more democratic. They're the ones that have gone out to vote. They're the ones that are learning more about the Constitution and about these laws around their states. They're the ones that are studying. And in fact, there was a rebuttal from a student, a graduate of Harvard, because this is a Harvard professor, and this is from Alex J. Harris. And Alex J. Harris says, a professor at my alumni matter, Elizabeth Bartlett, believes that homeschooling should be presumptively banned, with a burden placed on the parents to convince the government why they should homeschool. Okay. As a recent Harvard law graduate who was homeschooled from kindergarten through high school, I have a perspective. I am one of the seven kids. My dad was a high school dropout. My mom attended 1 year of college. They decided to homeschool out of deeply held conservative religious beliefs, moving our family to a secluded property 15 miles east of Portland, Oregon. When my twin brother, Brett, and I were 2 years old, we had no television, went to the doctor and dentist only occasionally, and some of my siblings were birthed at home and didn't get social security numbers. Our family did not register with the state or comply with the annual testing requirements. By every metric, we are the people Professor Bartlett would outlaw. It says, but my childhood was wonderful. Education was woven into everything we did in my family. There was always something to read and talk about around the dinner table. My parents never seemed to miss an opportunity for instruction. They were particularly apt at identifying what I was most passionate about and then using that as a tool for teaching. They wanted their children to love learning, and there was never a shortage of opportunities beyond our formal curriculum. We spent endless hours outdoors exploring the acres of woods around our house, building, often literally, adventures and solving problems, both real and imagined, on our own. When we weren't outside, we were reading books or trying to write our own stories. So, you know, here, this guy goes on explaining everything that he, as a homeschooler, went through and what his mother and father taught him. And I thought it was interesting because he had a father that was a high school dropout that educated him, and he became a Harvard graduate of law. And in fact, he works for one of the top law firms in the United States right now. You have homeschoolers like, I'm going to use an example of my son who joined the United States Navy and went to submarine school, and they were worried about him making it through the submarine school, that they gave him an initiative saying, if you're one of the top 10, you will get an extra $2,000 in your, as an initiative. My son graduated number 1 in that class. And when the teacher, the guy gave him his certificate, he asked him, he says, man, you're really educated and very knowledgeable. And he passed, it was like 105%. He even did the extra credit kind of thing that they have in the test. And they asked my son what school he went to. He said, School of Hard Knocks. And he says, oh, so you went to one of those hardcore schools. And he goes, no, I was homeschooled. And he says, my mother was my teacher. My father was my principal. And let me tell you, you want to be educated, have your mom and dad be your educator, because they keep an eye on you. I have another child that she went to college and she got an associate's degree and she got all A's and B's, and she's working as a pharmaceutical tech. Not everybody's going to be a lawyer. Not everybody's going to go to Harvard. Not even public school children are going to go to Harvard or go to the elite schools. A lot of public school children, in fact, that do go to public school, there's a lot of them that don't even graduate high school at all. They are dropouts, or they go to get their GEDs. And there's a lot of them that girls that end up pregnant in high school. And then you have my other son who just graduated this past year with a bachelor's degree in cyber electronics. And when he was going to public school, for the years that he did go to public school, they said that they couldn't seem to get him to read. Well, it took me 6 months to get my son to read. And I asked him why it took so long. He said, because the books that they had were dry and boring. So they are putting these children into a jail situation. And in fact, here in Ohio right now, they're getting ready to open up the state, so to speak. Well, when school starts back up, they are being told that the children have to be 6 feet apart from each other in the classroom. The children cannot go out and play all together. Only each classroom will have designated times to play together, and they will be quarantined supposedly together. And also, lunchtime will not be in the cafeteria like it was before. You will have them in the classroom. So Miss Bartlett, you're worried about socialism and you're worried about all these things. Maybe you should be starting to worry about what the public school system's doing today. That is my opinion on that. But also as a homeschool mom and a friend of other children that have been homeschooled and public schooled and private schooled. I have friends from all 3 categories and even charter schools. So there's 4 categories. I can tell you from experience that homeschooling does work, and they do know their democratic ways. They are not brainwashed by their parents. They are being taught how to learn. They are being taught to enjoy learning. They are being taught the truth. And the problem is this world doesn't want that. They want drones. They want people that will follow everybody else and do what they're instructed to do. That's what I have to say about that.
Well, Joe, one of the things, I homeschooled. Jonathan was in private school for a time. Then we homeschooled. Then he went back to private school for a couple of years. And then we finished off homeschooling when he went in junior high, he went from a 3rd-year college level education when they tested him. And by 2 years in school, he went in private school, he was back down to grade level, testing. So we finished off the other way. But one of the things, first off, when this person talks about the detriments of homeschooling, we don't have a democratic way here. We live in a republic.
Exactly.
And socialization is what our kids get. Kids who are homeschooled learn how to relate to every generation, not just their peers.
Well, what I found interesting when you're talking about that is the fact that she's worried about their social skills, and that when they go out, if you read the article, she says, they won't be able to go out and socialize with the rest of the world. I went to public school, and when I came out of school, I didn't know how to balance a checkbook or socialize with my adult peers as well as my children do. My children can socialize, and I know your son can, with 0 to 99 years.
Exactly. And, there's just, and also in socialization, at least here in Texas is a great homeschool state, or has been. Jonathan was we have a network called Panhandle School Educators Association, PACHIA. And Jonathan graduated with a group of 32. And he was president of his class. In other words, they got together, and they still even had let's elect a government for the homeschoolers, even though we're all homeschooling on our own. Although we had a biology person who had a degree in biology. And so she would teach the sciences. I'd send him over there and pay her to teach. Once he got to be like a junior in high school for, I think it was chemistry, and I don't know, but I had her teach that. I mean, because she's well informed in that. But he graduated president of his class of 32. He had prom, by the way, and they participated in parades. They did all these things. There are so many things out there. Homeschooling, it's such a joke. Homeschoolers are far more ready to face the world than any public school drone that is brought out. But the problem is, why they don't want it is they can't push the communism and socialism, because I see kid after kid that once they hit high school, or especially college, but now it's high school. Once they hit high school, they are pushed to walk away from God and from their family. I don't care how they've been raised. It takes them and sucks them in. And you have good kids, some that were even the strongest, one of the strongest kids, some of the strongest kids in your youth group, all of a sudden are bombarded with these things. And I've seen them walk away and become total socialists and communists and against God, because that's what they're pounded with every day, 8 hours a day. Doom, doom, doom.
Well, and you got also this woman sits there and she's part of the child advocate group. Okay. And if you look at her biography, it shows a lot of books and articles she's written. She is pro CPS, which is Child Protective Services, where if you look at the history of homeschoolers that have been called upon by other people to Child Protective Services because they figured that, oh, the child should go to school, so that's considered abuse. That is not abuse. There are more children in the system that are being abused. They've touted it, they've calculated it, than there are homeschool children. Homeschool children in their homes. There are some homeschoolers that are out that I don't even consider them homeschoolers, that do not abide by the laws of their states, do not abide by the laws of Yahweh, God, which is to take care of your children, and are abusive. There has been some homeschool situations, but very few. There are more children in the public school system. And excuse me, teachers do ignore the children. They're not all teachers. There's some teachers that are good. I know one teacher, in fact, it's Sandi's sister, that's a teacher that's loving and kind, and she looks at her children and makes sure that they're okay. But there's some teachers, they're just there for the paycheck. They don't care about your child like you do. You're the parent. You are the one that nurtures them, feeds them, and takes care of them. That's what you do. So you know what's wrong with them. And this is the thing, that a lot of homeschoolers have been called by CPS because neighbors see the children outside playing, being children. Children are to be children, not locked up in a cage like an animal. And that's what the public school system has done with these kids, to where if you look today, there's less and less recess for young children. There's less and less art and music for young children. There's less and less of anything and everything except for the structure of, okay, we're going to focus on the test, the test, the test. And yes, there's a book out there where there was this one person that they say they were homeschooled and they were abused. There is a book that this person wrote about, and she mentions that in her article. Well, you know what? That's one of many. And it does happen. Just like there's several of many in the public school, private school, and in the charter schools that are abused. It's not just in the homeschool community.
I would say it's less in homeschool because people care enough to put forth the effort.
And our children, homeschool children, are better educated. I'm sorry, guys. It's been shown. Even there's statistics, graphs, tests that are taken, SAT tests kids take, and a lot of homeschoolers pass the SAT test with higher scores than a public school child, because this day and age, they are just teaching to the test. Because I don't know if they do this in other states, but here in the state of Ohio, they have grades for each school. And they test the kids, and if the kids only get a certain percent, let's say they get a C in this class or in this test, all the kids got a C level. Okay, well, that's an average, so they get a C or a D for the school. So the teachers and the school district will get together and say, we need to really push the test and push them to learn the test so they can answer the test correctly, so we can get an A or a B, so that we can get better financing from the state, because that's what they're doing. They're not worried about the education of the child. They're worried about the money concept. They keep throwing books away and rewriting curriculum that's rewriting history and telling us there is no Holocaust. There's no this, there's no that. And if you look at even the school, last time I looked at a civics curriculum, public school civics curriculum, it wasn't even hardly maybe 1 or 2 chapters on the Constitution. If even that, nothing. So our children are only being educated what is wanting to be educated, and that is it. And they're being filled with lies and deceit. And they don't want us to tell the truth. That's simple.
They want to bring forth a revisionist form of history and life. And by the way, they are taught the test teach to the test, and then they're taught sex ed from grade 0. I mean, from ages 0 through the whole system.
Yeah, well, they're not just taught today just sex ed. They're taught things that are just corruption.
No, they are. They are. In fact, I pulled an article that would go along with that, but I don't know that there's time. Sherry, do you want to jump in here?
I have a response to that. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but this is the New England Primer. This was introduced in 1890 in Boston, and for over 100.
Yeah, we keep losing her.
Yeah, we do. But she's talking about a primer, and yeah, those primers from the 1890s and McGuffey readers even. Guys, if you can find McGuffey readers, those are really good to have. Find yourself at a garage sale, an estate sale, or a library sale, because libraries are now selling good books from like before 1940s. And some of them, they're considered antiques, but there's a lot that are not, that they've been throwing away, that are considered living books, and they're good books to read, clean books to read. But one of the things that I ended up buying, by the way, Mark, for 50 cents at a garage sale is the Constitution, a book that has the whole Constitution. And I made my kid, yes, in order for my kids to graduate, they had to read the whole Constitution, and they had to find one amendment that they were interested in studying about, and they had to write a paper on it, or they would not graduate my high school.
Good job.
Well, let me read the alphabet. This New England Primer, it says A wise son makes glad a father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. B, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than with great treasure and trouble there. C, come unto Christ, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and he will give you rest. The whole thing is based on scripture, and this is what they learn to read by. We also have the American Dictionary of the English Language. It's the Noah Webster 28. Many of the, he quotes from Chaucer and from a lot of the classics, but he also quotes from the Bible, like on the word defraud. It says to deprive of right, and then it says, we have corrupted no man, we have defrauded no man. 2 Corinthians, he'll use that as an example. Or raise, to rebuild, they shall raise up the former desolations. Isaiah. So he uses scripture in his 1828 dictionary. And so these are the things in this little book here, until 1900, this continued to be a principal text in all types of American schools: public, private, semi-private, home schools, parochial schools, and all the founders, as well as most other Americans, learned to read from this New England Primer and the Bible. And it has a catechism in here. It's just everything in here is geared towards God and living a godly life. So this is what we were founded now.
Well, and it's interesting. If we remember, the public school wasn't the norm, it was the exception. Everybody was homeschooled for the first
Harvard, it was
hundreds of years.
What you find out is, with the history of public schools, is the person that started the public school system, she had a heart for the children. She wanted children that were in homes that were poor, that they didn't know how to read or write. She wanted to help them. And that's what she did, is she opened up these free schools for the poor, to help them so they could be able to read and write, because they had lost that ability, the parents did. And that's understandable. But what has happened is it's become a almost like a prison for the children, instead of just reading and writing. And if you looked, she didn't spend a whole lot of time. And then you can get into the history of Charlotte Mason and a lot of the forefront people that started educating in a certain way and showing how to educate. And if you look, homeschooling started way back in Genesis, guys. Abraham even homeschooled his son, you know, and the women in the scriptures knew how to read and write the scriptures. They were not treated like in the dark ages where the women were not taught how to read and then they couldn't read the Bible. This was just all just torn away from us. And
Right.
that's what's happening again is this is all being torn away, and they're trying to tear our children away from us and make it to where a community raises your child, not you. And it says in the scripture, you're to raise up your child in the way they should go. It doesn't say the community is to raise up the child in the way they should go.
Real quick, Mark, I know we're at time. Did you want to jump in there? You haven't been able to say anything. You good? I know we're the old school people, so
I think you guys ought to get passionate about this though, because you seem like it's like no big deal to you. So yeah, maybe you should get a little more passionate. That's all.
okay. Well, we'll do that. By the way, on a last note, the schools have been instructed to pass every child, even though the children haven't been in school. And Brenda said, my sister, who is the teacher, she says those kids, they give them the assignments, but they're not graded. Do you think any kid turns in assignments or does anything? No.
They're not even signing in.
They're not even signing in. So guess what? All the kids go forward to the next grade in the public school system, even though the work's not been done. Even though they may not have the knowledge, that's not been an issue ever in public school, though. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I guess I just
take back your kids, mommies and daddies. They are
back
your children. God blessed you with your children. He did not bless the public school system or the government. For your children to them. He blessed you. You are responsible to train them up in the way they should go. Not the schools, not the government, you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.